Popcorn, Piss and Vinegar, giving you a raw take on movies, television, and pop culture. My name's Chris.
Scott.
JB4.
All right, and today we're going to be talking about HBO's The Watchmen, which is a direct sequel, not to the Zack Snyder movie, but to the comic book. We've talked about, I think we reviewed the first episode already, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Yep. And we'll start off with that. Hey, Scott, I remember you saying that you weren't necessarily on board with this show because you felt that the movie just gave a better visual representation of the characters. And even though this is based on the comic book, the movie kind of set the right tone for you. How do you feel after the first episode?
I feel exactly the same. I still don't feel like. I feel like the movie set a better visual of what I wanted the Watchmen to look like in my head. Like, I think the visuals were a little cooler looking than what this HBO show put together.
I definitely agree with you.
But let me say one thing. When I watched the first episode, I didn't realize what I was watching. Now that I've watched it, I'm completely fine with it.
Oh, from a content perspective, I think it's one of the best shows of 2019.
Agreed.
In my opinion. This is a conversation that we've all had lately about sticking the landing. I kind of feel like they failed on that in the show.
Okay.
I'll tell you the reason why in a little bit, but it didn't ruin the show for me. I think the thing with it is that this show, as I'm watching it through the first, probably, 9 episodes, huh? Yeah, 9 episodes. Through the first 7 episodes that I watched.
I think it was 8, actually.
Yeah. It was 8. Through these episodes that I watched, through the first 3/4 of it, I'm watching a show right now, and I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm a pretty.
It is 9, guys.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay.
I thought it was 9. I'm a pretty apolitical guy. I sat there and I watched this, and I mean, I try not to really get involved in a lot of politics shit, but I kind of see things for what they are, and I'm watching. I'm like, this show is woke as a motherfucker. This show is fucking woke as fuck, but it's so goddamn well done. I mean, dude, it's amazing. It's so good and so well put together. The only thing that really kind of threw it for me, and it's not like Game of Thrones where I sit there and I'm like, I invested all this time, and the end of it just ruined it entirely for me.
Yeah.
I still think that they did as best as they could, because this goes back to a conversation that Mark Bernardin of Fat Man Beyond had with Damon Lindelof, the showrunner. Lindelof asked him, said, man, HBO is on the 3rd time approaching me to do a show based on The Watchmen. He says, man, I really don't feel like I should do it. And Bernardin told him, well, you should totally do it, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Huh. So
he went ahead and he did it. And, we're listening to his interview and all that stuff. He said he read a bunch of Ta-Nehisi Coates and shit like that, which, I mean, hey, look, man, I don't sit there and bust anybody's balls on their political beliefs or anything like that. Look, man, different shit is relevant to people. I understand that. I don't break anybody's balls for what they believe and what they aspire to, especially being an American. But, hey, look, the guy took what he did from that source material and he spun it into a really well-done tale. I just think that there's a couple of things that just knock things off course for me in the last 2 episodes in particular. I don't really like the way that Dr. Manhattan looked. I thought it looked terrible. And it isn't really the actor. I agree with Scott on this. I think that if they would have took that actor and they would have put a little bit more in their CG budget and made it look like the Dr. Manhattan from the movie with that actor.
It was his eyebrows.
Yeah, I think it would have looked better. Another thing also that 2 things that knock things off for me. I didn't like Dr. Manhattan's reason of returning, but I get it. When you write a character that complex, you just got to kind of make it fit in your story. I didn't find it very satisfying, but for what they need to do to fit within their story, they did a good job. I just can't give it an A+ because of my own reasons, because of what I look for in the storytelling. Another thing also that really disappointed me, I think it was an ingenious idea to wrap the Rorschach character in being in a white supremacist group. A lot of people are very hard on that because they don't like how they twisted that image into the Rorschach character that's very beloved in the comic. But from the first episode, when they listened to the manifesto of the 7th Cavalry, they actually twist Rorschach's words as their kind of pledge of allegiance. So I mean that's I think it's done ingeniously. I think the only thing I don't like is the fact that when you get the big reveal that it's Senator Keene's son that's behind all of the shit with the 7th Cavalry, they had this brilliant plan of trapping Dr. Manhattan and stealing his power. But man, they're just instantly reduced to a bunch of fucking yeehaw hillbillies just so the writers feel that they can get a cheap swipe at white supremacists. And hey, look, dude, white supremacists fucking, hey, dude, they're horrible. They're terrible people. But I think the thing with it is, man, is that you can still hate that villain and keep them very calculated without being cartooned down to a depiction of a stereotypical fucking dumb redneck. I found that disappointing.
Those are pretty rich, dumb rednecks. That seemed to be a very elite crew in that room, and not very.
So what I'm saying is with
Mayberry.
them. But what I'm saying is with them being as elite as they were, we didn't need to reduce down to yeehaw.
Now,
we didn't need that.
My
at
other
all.
comment to that was, it was only taking place. I mean, this is a plus or a minus. It only took place in Tulsa. In one specific spot. This wasn't a world it was a world domination thing, but it wasn't a worldwide. Like, you didn't see guys from other countries, or it just seemed like this was a very, very secluded event. That happened,
and I understand. We can argue it that way to where there are a bunch of Western hick rednecks. I get it, but I just didn't like it, and not because I'm in defense of white supremacy. I just didn't like it because I was like, man, you basically diluted a pretty fucking sick villain. That's a fucking asshole, a horrible piece of shit to begin with. I just wish that if you we didn't have to reduce him for the fake of. To me, it's kind of like sitting there and like you beat the fuck out of somebody and you do it well, and then what you do is do something as petty as to kick them in the fucking head when they're down, when you've already beat their ass down good enough. It's just my opinion. Like I said, it didn't ruin it for me. Yeah. It just kind of I give the show an A- opposed to the A+, just because of those little things. I'm sorry, a B+. Sorry.
Fair enough.
So,
I think, first of all, I think all the best science fiction is woke. I think in this case, maybe the woke was a little bit more on its sleeve. But, like, I didn't know that slaughter happened in Utah. That actually happened. The very
anniversary was not that long ago.
Right. So, and you're getting that a lot. So that in and of itself, I think, is a weird little win for it. But beyond that, I was very moved by the love story, and for me, the draw for Dr. Manhattan, which I thought was brilliant, is why did he even do this in the first place if it's all predestined? Because there's that quote-unquote tunnel of love, right? That's like when you get married, for better or for worse, that's what that tunnel of love is. And he was just like, I don't know what the fuck happens in there. I need to know what that is, and I know that it ends tragically, but there's still mystery to it, and I need to fucking know, because it's a blind spot in his otherwise omnipotent existence, which is why in the very beginning, or the very end of the comic, he just goes to Mars and is like, fuck it, I'm out. Like, I'm bigger than all this linear, knowing what's going to happen shit.
This goes back to Alan Moore's very true statement of why graphic novels, especially for a story like this, works better as a graphic novel than it does as a visual medium like television. Well, I mean, comics are a visual medium, but I mean the medium of television or film in particular, to try to do this kind of story and shit. I think the comic does a way better explanation of how he sees time all at once.
Right.
It's better visual cues, and it's a lot more understandable. You can understand it when you read it and look at it, opposed to someone trying to explain the complexity of that. But I mean, hey, look, everything can be art. Man, it's just what my expectations are.
Sure.
My expectations aren't right or wrong. I mean, they're right, but you know,
Right.
You're just wrong this time.
right? I'm just right.
But-
I'm just right, and you're wrong this time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And
it. So.
you know, everything, every opinion. I think. I mean, this is a show of nothing but opinions, and everything has an asterisk here. But in my opinion, also the reason the sort of like, you know, honky slaughter worked for me is that Adrian Veidt is the smartest villain in the world, and his daughter is smarter than he is. So they got outplayed from the drop. You know what I mean? And I think that woman going like, just fucking kill us and don't monologue, was basically her saying, I know checkmate when I see it. Like, it worked for me. I didn't feel like it was being reductive just because, and again, having read the comic, Adrian Veidt was the most brilliant man in the world. You know, like that's who they lost to, is the progeny of that. You know,
I had no problem with the literally the only problem I had with the 7th Cavalry, and it sounds silly, is just the yeehaw. It just annoyed me. I'm like, dude, these are fucking cool, world class, like organized bad motherfuckers, dude.
Right.
And I mean, man, you're watching them everything's getting ready to unfold, and you know they're going to get their ass kicked. You know it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I thought it was handled great. I just thought in that one moment, I was like, dude, you just fucking turned Darth Vader into fucking Kylo Ren.
Exactly.
I mean, just with that shit. I mean, there it is.
Right.
So,
or the dude at the end of Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't, like I said, man, it doesn't, like, that's my only really two beefs. But man, I mean, as far as like, well, and the other thing too is with the Dr. Manhattan looked horrible. God, it just looked so bad toward those last couple episodes.
It didn't bother me too much.
It didn't bother me either. And the reason that I can go back on my original statement of I didn't like how it was like put on screen, on the TV screen, how I really wanted more of a Zack Snyder visual, is because like going back to that and watching it and sort of understanding what this show is actually about. Yes, it's about the Watchmen. It's about something that took place in the comics. It's a continuation, but it's not necessarily in the vein of the movie of the Watchmen or in the vein of the comic of the Watchmen, because understanding how Lost worked and understanding how the Leftovers worked, somewhat understanding how Lindelof writes his shows and how he does this, it always ends up being more about the actual characters than about the scenery. So yes, you might not like how Dr. Manhattan looked, but you liked how he had to take himself out of being the most omnipotent, being the most powerful person in the world, and dumbing himself down to being just a regular human, just so he can experience what that love is, being married. Like,
it's like Zeus, like she
it's a
says
character.
at the beginning of the courtship. She was like, "Are you just, you're a tourist in mortal world?"
Right. Like so for me, and going back and understanding how all those characters had to deal with just that tremendous amount of hate and racism towards each other, and just dealing with that throughout, and how we find out that that Lou Gossett Jr. is
the Hooded Justice.
The Hooded Justice, like
that was ingenious.
Yeah, that was fantastic. But you still get to see, even though it seemed like a bottle episode, you still get to see him become that and deal with it, and still become the hero that he is, even though he was already a hero to begin with.
But I think that's what's pretty cool. You say bottle episode, but what's so great about it is, I mean, you could view it as that, but I mean, it becomes the episode that gives you the aha out of everything, and not only for the show itself,
right,
but also the mythology of the Watchmen.
Right.
Because, I mean, listening to Lindelof's interview, which is an hour-and-a-half interview, you can check it out on Fat Man Beyond. It's not,
man, I'm in.
It's not the current episode, but it's the last one, and it's Bernardin has a sit-down with him, and they ask him questions, but he gives a whole big run on everything, and you say how he does shows. I thought this was really funny, what he said. He said, when I wrote this show, he said, I wanted... Like he said, this is the way that I viewed it when I wrote the show, when I put together the first episode. I want two people sitting down and watching it. One person knows absolutely nothing about the Watchmen. The other person is a Watchmen aficionado. I want the person watching the show to look at the aficionado and say, dude, what the fuck was that? And the guy who's the aficionado says, I don't fucking know. So he said, that's kind of what I wanted in the beginning, to where I could sit there and like, there's visual cues of what you want. There's the visual cues there to where you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that. I know what that is. But even that first episode, I mean, dude, I sat there and I recognized all of the cues and the Easter eggs and everything. And I'm like, holy shit, where is this thing going to go?
Right.
Exactly.
So
which was exciting.
It's exciting, but then it doesn't matter. Like, you get so deep into this character development that it doesn't matter that this and these guys, and you see this little, like the TV show. Like, we never needed to see that. The TV show, meaning the show about the original Watchmen, the Minutemen. Like, they never have to show it. They just put it in there, but because it was never about that show. This is about this secluded incident in Tulsa. But that just happens.
But talking about the Minutemen show that's on the TV, I kind of wanted that. I would have been like, man, that would have been a cool, like, extra if they would have sat there and they would have filmed like a documentary and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But listening to Lindelof's interview, he said, my Curse of the Black Freighter was not the television show. The Curse of the Black Freighter moment for us writing this thing is the Ozymandias shorts in each episode.
Right.
That's where we came. That was our idea for Curse of the Black Freighter. So that's where the parallels to the story we're playing out was Ozymandias' story. Is he's telling you the whole time what's going on as it's unfolding. You just have to wait for everything to come together to where it goes as one big puzzle piece, and you do get that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times I'm watching the show, I'm like, fuck, man, I hope I can kind of like catch up with what's going on here, because there was some things that were genuinely confusing me. And then when they had that one episode where the between the nostalgia episode and the one after it, you're like, holy shit, here it all is.
Yeah.
Like, perfectly put together for you. And so well done. I mean, incredible.
One of the landings, I mean, it stuck a ton of landings in terms of loose ends. And one of them was, why did they kill Don Johnson? You're like, wait, what about the murder? I remember thinking, like, on the 6th episode, I'm like, are they ever going to get around to why? And then it's a hiccup in Dr. Manhattan's, re-spinning up. That was so fucking genius. Oh, it was great.
Oh, and they were crafty, too. They were some crafty bastards, because if you went to the IDMB page and you looked at Don Johnson, you're like, dude, an actor of that caliber can't really die in the first episode. They had him listed being all 9 episodes on the IMDb.
Really?
So they were crafty when they did that shit.
Yeah.
Here's another little cool factoid, too. Do you know why Don Johnson was cast as that character?
No.
They shot it in Miami.
The reason why is because Damon Lindelof he cut his first job as a television writer in a writer's room for the show Nash Bridges.
Oh.
So that's the reason why he
Yeah.
cast Don Johnson.
And Don Johnson was great.
Oh yeah, he was good. I mean, for the
Look.
one episode or the 2 episodes he's in.
I think everybody who was in that, like, acting part on everybody did a great job.
The casting was great. I mean, Gene Smart is fucking as Laurie Japusik. I mean, dude. I mean, the casting was all great. Your boy that played I can never remember the actor's name, but he played Black Manta in Aquaman, and he was also the opposite of Anthony Mackie in the video game episode of Black Mirror.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, that dude, he played Dr. Manhattan. He was
Yeah.
fucking great actor, man. Regina King, I mean, world class, man.
Yeah.
Perfect casting. Another thing too that Lindelof said that made him nervous, because I mean, hey, look, it is. Look, we live in a hyper conscious society now to where we don't want to offend people. I think in this instance, this is absolutely a good thing. Lindelof said that he had no one Asian in his writing room. He said when he picked his writing room, he said on purpose, he said, I picked 4 people that knew everything about the Watchmen, and I picked 4 people who didn't know a fucking thing.
Cool.
And he said the important thing about all this is world building. He said what you're seeing, he said, you got to think of as an iceberg. You're seeing the tip. We're showing you on the show what we've done, but all of the world building we've done is all the shit that floats under the water you don't see. He said, man, if you saw the Bible that we wrote for this show, There's shit on there you will never see. We built it for the mythology because it's better to have those things established because you can make a better show with having your own shit established.
Right.
It doesn't need to be on screen. It just needs to be there so you can confidently put the material on film.
Right.
But the long way around he said, look, we had no Asian writers. We wanted to make sure that Lady True was represented properly. When we cast her in the role, the actress that played her even was kind of apprehensive because she was like, I don't want to play the stereotypical Asian. She actually worked as an advisor to make sure that all of the shit was properly done in how a Vietnamese person would react in these situations. And her parents are Vietnam nationals.
She was
wow. Okay.
Like
She
as
was-
soon as you see her
she
walk
was
on the
fucking
screen,
awesome,
it's like,
dude.
holy shit! Like
Yeah.
And I mean, the big reveal that she's Ozymandias' daughter is fucking
Yeah.
great. Oh, he said the only thing he didn't have control over, he said it was a total creative choice by Jeremy Irons to play Ozymandias as a fucking crackpot. He said,
Oh, really?
He said, we wrote him to where he was kind of like he was like he was in the comic book. You know, he's the aged, good-looking man that's the smartest man ever. Well, when Jeremy Irons looked at the material, he's like, this character is fucking ridiculous.
yeah.
So he said, like, the whole thing of him farting in the courtroom and all, that was all him that came up with that shit.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, is it that when you're that, if you're that much of a genius, can you not? At some point, you have to go crazy.
Yeah, he was an eccentric, crazy person.
You know,
that's the whole thing.
Well, I mean, he was in isolation for
So-
yeah.
8 years.
8 years that we find out is a year. Every episode was a year into
Yeah.
his prison. And what I didn't catch, two things I didn't catch. The first one was when Lady True goes and buys that farm. You remember she goes to buy the farm from those people?
Right.
Yeah,
And
uh-huh.
she walks out and she sees that spaceship crashing to Earth.
Uh-huh.
That is him crashing to Earth from
Oh.
wherever, that moon,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
whatever. And she's like, that's ours. We need to go get that. Because she was going to get her father.
Oh, wow.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, you see the statue of him in the garden, and you're like, oh, that's a nice statue of him in the
Right.
garden. And you realize, holy shit, that's actually
That's
him.
actually
Yeah, it was him the whole time. Yeah. It's
Keeping him on ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking, dude. It's really well done, and I mean, really, when it comes to Ozymandias' character, with him being as fucking crackpot and as nuts as he is, I mean, dude,
Right.
you're talking about a guy who sat there and went through an entire plot to create a fucking space squid that's going to rip through an alternate reality and kill 8 million people to save the world, in an effort to create utopia. But then somebody sits there and says, "I got utopia for you. And if you help
Right.
me with this, I'm going to send you to Utopia."
Right.
But
Fucking hates
Utopia, he fucking hates it.
Right.
And the thing with it is that that's one of my favorite scenes of the show. Sir, was I a good adversary to you? No.
No.
So great.
That kind of goes down to where they're like, they have Dr. Manhattan, and he is the nuclear option for everyone. Like, the world is the way it is because of Dr. Manhattan at this point.
Right.
Where nuclear war and everything is put to the side and everybody supposedly loves, and the world's a much better place because of this being. Yet
Yeah.
we're experiencing literally the opposite of that in every one of these episodes. The world is not. It's fucking terrible because of what Dr. Manhattan did. And so, yes, you can kind of parallel where Ozymandias lives to where what they're living on Earth.
Are you familiar with deism?
Not necessarily.
Well, deism is the idea that there is a God, but he basically, created the heavens and earth in 7 days or whatever, and then walked away like he created a watch. That's literally what they say. Like, basically, he doesn't give a shit. You can pray, you can care. He's beyond
Life goes
that.
on.
And that's sort of that was the vibe I was getting from Dr. Manhattan. It's just like, well, he's checked out when Jean reaches out to him and leaves a phone message for him, right? It's just like he doesn't give a fuck. He's beyond it. But no, he's essentially a tourist as a human, feeling all the things we're feeling. While that, it's so tight. It's such a tight. I mean, really, the only loose end is the sewer guy. That's the only one that I just sort of like. But other than that, everything's very tightly wrapped up, I think.
And speaking of tightly wrapping up, we're going to try to keep this episode short. But let me, I mean, we obviously all really really loved
Loved
it.
it.
I mean, dude, I love it. Even though I'm critical,
Loved
man,
it,
the
yeah.
two things that I bet, man, I'm just nitpicky. It's a great show. It's definitely top 3. It's going to be my number 2. I mean, I'm totally in love with The Mandalorian because I'm a Star Wars guy. That's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah,
my
yeah.
number 1 of 2019. But dude, Watchmen is unequivocally number 2. Nothing can even. Well, I kind of like this bet. Nah, dude,
Yeah.
this shit's fucking rad, dude. It's really good. Oh, and just off subject, real quick. Another great show that I can recommend to you for 2019, dude. Watch the fucking 2nd season of Castle Rock. It's fucking awesome. It's really, really well done.
I can also tell you, sneak preview here, Witcher rocks. At
Oh,
least the
awesome.
first 4
Yeah.
episodes.
I've been speaking of, we just recorded the Star Wars show a little while ago, and thinking of Witcher, it actually reminded me of something that's kind of a parallel of what's going on with Rise of Skywalker, is that fans of The Witcher are shitting on it and critics are saying it's great. I'm going to stick with the critics on this one because I don't know anything about the books,
Right.
the
Neither do
comics,
I.
or the video game.
Netflix
So I'm going to
has
take
their
it in
Game
as
of
being
Thrones.
I'm going to take it in for being a good show.
Okay, let me ask you this before we get off.
Yes.
Season 2.
No.
Don't care.
No.
No,
It doesn't, not necessary.
so you don't need it.
No.
No.
Do you think they'll have it?
Yes. Yes. No, but I don't need it. Honestly, not only do I not need it, I don't want it.
All right, so I compare this show to Westworld in the sense that Westworld to me was a 1-season show. It
I agree.
wrapped up
I agree with you.
very well.
Yep.
Now, the difference between this show, the difference between what I'm about to say, I did like season 2 of Westworld. I
Right.
thought, even though I thought season 1 was a whole, I didn't mind season 2. So, yes, I also think season 1 of this is a whole.
Tight.
It's complete. It's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I won't mind if they bring on a season 2 and it's just as good.
Well, and I think that's kind of the trap that Lindelof wrote for himself, because he specifically says in this interview, and I mean, look, people say shit and they do what they do, and he said, I'm ready to move on and do something different. He's like, man, I'm fucking with other people's IP. He said, this is like the 3rd time I've done this now. He said, and I know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to come and they're going to offer it to me, and I'm going to fucking fight my ass off to tell them no, and I'll probably end up doing it anyway. But
He says that?
yeah, he
That's
says
great.
this in this interview. He says, but man, look, I want to go work on my own stuff. And he said, I did this with Watchmen intentionally. I wanted to tell a story that is ended.
Wow.
It's ended.
He said he and his team have no more left to say on this story.
Yeah, and that's it. And on top of it, too, is, I mean, look, the comic book does the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know what Regina... You don't need to know what Regina does. You make it up for yourself. The last line of the graphic novel is, I leave it in your hands.
Right.
And that's it. And I mean, that's what he did. He left this in our hands for us to make a decision for ourselves. Did she walk on water? Is he really contained by someone? Is he contained within her? Did he just leave his powers in the egg while he's off just reconstructing himself? We know he can make duplicates of himself. Why couldn't he duplicate his power? He's
Right.
fucking omnipotent.
Right.
I mean, he's the most powerful thing ever created in this mythology. You
Right.
know, I mean, I think I'm going to go off and create life somewhere else. I mean,
Right.
dude, he does it. Like, it's shown.
Bored now.
Yeah.
I'll just make a utopia.
But I don't care.
Yeah.
It was it presented itself so well to me that I don't care, regardless what happens.
I'd almost like to see this thing as an anthology. It's kind of like I'd like somebody to sit there and say, okay, well, look, we're going to do a Watchmen, but the thing with it is that we're going to do our own take to the the graphic novel.
Right.
Damon Lindelof gave you his sequel. Now we're going to give you our sequel.
Sure.
And it doesn't really connect anything to the other one at all. I mean, we'll give you some little Easter eggs like Black Mirror does, but it's not really truly happening in the same universe, so to speak. Well,
Right.
same universe, different timeline, basically. I mean, I guess I'd be okay with that, but I don't even want that because this is so well done.
Yeah. I can't see a second season being any better than the first.
No, I agree with you.
I don't see that.
I agree with
I mean,
you.
it's possible, but I mean, if that's how he feels, then that makes me more inclined to go leave it be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Oh, no, and that's exactly it. So, we got anything to add?
No, watch it if you haven't.
Yeah,
It's great.
man. I think this is, look, I love Watchmen so much. I actually paid for an HBO subscription to watch this show, and I don't regret it. I'm really
Excellent.
pleased really good. I'm going to hang on to my HBO. It's going to turn into the Max thing, I think, in February.
Correct.
So we run a couple
wow.
of months, and and then we'll have some once again another streaming service to lean on. So
Well, it's already one I lean on. It's just going to have the Friends reruns now.
well, I mean, it'll have the Friends reruns, but they
lot
got a
of
lot.
shit.
They're going to have a lot of
They have a lot
cool
of shit.
original content that I think is going to be.
DC, right? DC's
Yeah,
going to be.
they're doing a
big.
Green Lantern TV series that's done by Berlanti that doesn't tie into the CW. It's its own thing.
Good.
Yeah, so
Good.
yeah, pretty cool. So there it is. All right, well, look, we appreciate you guys listening. Please jump over to YouTube. Also, jump over to iTunes. Please subscribe to our show. Leave us a rating. Write us a review. We really appreciate it. And look, 5 stars only. Really appreciate that. Also, jump over to PPV Guys group over on Facebook. Join up with us. Post shit. We'll talk about shit. We'll do all that shit. Thanks for listening. End scene.